Hey, what's happening, Horror Files? Welcome back to another episode of Week in Horror, the only podcast that floats down here. This week, we are covering July 5th through July 11th. Thank you all so much for joining us. I am JL, and with me, as always, are Eugene and Alex.
What's up, everybody?
Hey.
All right, so before we jump into it this week, we got some really, really cool, just a couple of cool things that I recently read about. First and foremost, with the success of the Halloween, not really a reboot, but the Halloween sequel that they made, Blumhouse, there is rumors that they could be tackling Friday the 13th next.
What?
That's badass.
So, but some of the best movies come from Blumhouse, so...
So, yes, this thing could... It's still kind of a rumor, but some of the... but there was a rumor that they were tackling Halloween. And people were kind of like, what? Are they really? And then all of a sudden we got this, with David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, produced by Blumhouse, but it's possible they could be doing this. And there's another kind of rumor that Stephen King wants to dip his toes into the Jason Voorhees mythology.
That's going to be like the darkest Friday the 13th ever.
This could be super wild. And I think this King was talking about doing it from... Because, we've talked multiple times about how Stephen King's kind of vision of hell is just, hell is repetition. It's the same thing over and over again. And he kind of wanted to do he wants to do a Voorhees story, a Jason Voorhees story, because he can't imagine a worse hell, because in Jason's mind, he's continuously being drowned over and over and over and over again. That he is stuck at the lake, repeating the same things over and over and over again, bound to that lake, never able to leave it. He can come out of the water to kill people, but he always goes back. So, and Stephen King was like, I can't imagine a worse hell than what Jason Voorhees goes. I think he was talking about possibly doing a story from, Jason's perspective, which would be weird.
That would be super weird.
And then, of course, with the idea that Blumhouse might be tackling it as well, if they could do it as well as they tackle Friday the 13th, that would be pretty badass. So, but that's a rumor going around. Any of our listeners, if you have thoughts on that, or if you hear something else, hit us up at weekinhorror@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think. Now, something cool that I wanted to do before we jump on the movies is, right now, so many people are quarantined. So many people are either furloughed, they're work furloughed, or they're stuck in their homes, or even those who, unfortunately, have gotten sick, who, maybe your symptoms are light, but you can't go into work, you're stuck in the house. And so when we're stuck in the house, Alex, what do we do when we're stuck in the house?
Watch a lot of movies.
We binge watch shit.
Watch
yes,
all
we
of
fucking
the
do.
We're going to watch the internet. All of it.
I will complete the internet.
So what I wanted us to do for our listeners is we went and we jumped in Netflix, and we each found a couple of little hidden gems that were either under marketed or not a lot of people knew about them, but they were really, really fucking good. So we kind of scoured Netflix, and we found some, and we wanted to tell you guys about them, just to maybe give you some recommendations of what you could watch while, unfortunately, you are quarantined. So these might help. So I'll go first. I found two, because I wanted us to find two each, and I found Caliber and Super Dark Times. Now, these were both really, really sick films. To give kind of a synopsis, Caliber is about two childhood friends who go off on a hunting trip in the Scottish Highlands and wind up killing the wrong thing, which kicks off a massive chain of events that leads to serious tragedy. But it is a hardcore, really intense thriller that I think people might really, really dig. And Super Dark Times is also a super, super intense psychological... I'd say it's a psychological horror. It's kind of billed as a thriller, but it definitely has horrific elements, because it's about two childhood friends. I'm sensing a theme here. Two friends who go out into the woods and accidentally get involved in a very, very gruesome accident. And in their efforts to attempt to cover it up, wind up driving a wedge between them that sends them off into paths of paranoia and extreme violence. So those were two really, really interesting flicks that I came across. Little known, but I think that our listeners might enjoy them. Eugene, what did you find?
So I went and I scoured through, and I actually found it's a Spanish film called The Bar. And basically, what it is it just starts off just like an everyday thing. People are just going in, and one person walks out of the bar, and all of a sudden they get shot through the head and drop dead. So of course everybody else in the bar is like, okay, well, we don't want to leave. What's going on? Two people are shot, and then a guy comes out of the bathroom like bleeding and is clearly sick and falls down. He's screaming like, "Don't touch me! Don't touch me!" And that's when these people realize they could possibly be exposed to some kind of like deadly virus, and that they could be quarantined in there. And so it's a great movie because it's like everyday people just walking in casually. All of a sudden, you just find yourself in a situation that, especially with today's times, it's like hey, wait, what happened? Okay, we got to figure out how we're gonna get out of this to survive. So that's a great film. Definitely check it out. It's called The Bar. And the other one was this is probably my favorite title out of all of them. Girls with Balls.
Ooh. Make sure you type that in on Netflix and not Internet Explorer.
Yes, if you're going to search for it, search Netflix Girls with Balls. The Netflix part is really important on that. But it's a fun movie where it's a group of college volleyball players, and they end up on the way back from a tournament. It breaks down, and they end up fighting off this like degenerate group of hunters like in the middle of the woods. But the thing is like, it's a fun film. It's fun. They're using the ball and spiking it in like the bad guys' faces and stuff like that, and so it has some horror elements, but it's gonna be funny. It's a fun film. So definitely check that out. So that's Netflix, The Bar, and then Girls with Balls. I can't. One day I'll be mature enough to say that. Not today, but one day.
Girls with Balls.
And then Alex, what were you able to find?
Found a couple of good ones. The first one that I found here is called Inhuman Kiss, and this is a Thai movie. It's a romantic horror film, but it's 1940s Thailand, and there is a detached head involved in this tribe, and it starts taking over the lives of these poor people trying to go about their lives. But this one, it really caught me because it was a different kind of monster, kind of Medusa-esque type. Just it's weird because it's like this indigenous Thailand back setting, but there's a lot of elements in this that were very interesting, and I got an entry for Best International Feature Film at the 92nd Academy Awards. Actually, was not nominated though. And the second one I found was called When Angels Sleep, and this movie was about this guy is leaving. He's trying to get home. It's late. He gets tired. He gets pulled over. He ends up driving anyways, and there's these two girls that were walking down the side of the road. The car swerves and hits one of them, and the friend that did not get hit, that witnessed it, started panicking, and so in order to try to fix the situation, they have to kind of stick together, but things kind of go left turn real fast, and some dark stuff happens. So without spoiling it, that one was good too. So that's called When Angels Sleep. It was a 2018 film, so pretty recent. Definitely check those out though as well. I want to go and watch JL's. I want to go watch your Super Dark Times.
Super Dark Times is pretty intense.
I'm going to have to go watch that.
I'm going to check it out.
All right, awesome. So some good hidden gems on Netflix that you can check out if you happen to be stuck in the house, if you happen to be furloughed, or if you happen to be quarantined. To go down those again, it's Caliber, Super Dark Times, The Bar, Girls with Balls, Inhuman Kiss, and When Angels Sleep. Awesome. Cool. Some good stuff for people to watch. All right.
Okay, then. So, couple things to check out, but you're here for us to talk about some movies out. So, Alex, what do we got first?
We're gonna go way, way back. I get the first, and it is first of its kind, actually. We're talking about Blood Feast. This movie came out July 6, 1963. And like I said, it was the first of its kind. It's crowned the original splatter film, the first splatter film, directed by Herschel Gordon Lewis, written by Alison Louise Down. This one stars William Kerwin, Mal Arnold, Connie Mason, Lynn Bolton, Scott Hall, sorry. And this movie is it's a lot of fun. It's about this Egyptian caterer goes around and kills these women to bring back body parts to build a Egyptian goddess and bring her to life. And it's just fucking brutal. It's so brutal.
So
It's
fucking
so
gnarly.
old, and it's the first splatter film. But honestly, like a lot of it looked too real. There was like points where it's like, you've cut yourself and you've seen blood on the floor. It's like when you watch a movie, like that like the movie blood is fake because it doesn't look like the blood. And there's parts of this movie, it's like that's real fucking blood. It was like, oh my god, yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah, there are some like brutal kills, and you're talking 1963, so you haven't seen kills like this before, like ever. There are films that have implied all sorts of bad things, and we found a body ripped apart, blah blah blah. That's been in filmmaking forever, but this is like, okay, a girl gets scalped, right, when she's like sitting out on a beach with her boyfriend, and like top of her head's torn off, and like tongues cut out, and eyeballs gouged, when she's sitting there like in the bathtub, and it's as straight up, we are going to show you everything as real as we can make it.
Oh, it's so fucking brutal. It's so wild because this being the very, very first splatter flick. Herschel Gordon Lewis. We talked about him. We did a little in memoriam for him a little bit ago on his birthday, and what would have been his birthday. And this guy was basically the father of the modern gore flick. We would not have movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and pretty much anything gory or sloppy or disgusting. Were it not for Peter Jackson's early works, we would not have had any of this stuff without Herschel Gordon Lewis's Blood Feast. And what's funny, and I love this because we look back on this movie with great fondness, despite the fact that it's kind of under budget. The acting is not fantastic, but the effort and the love that went into it to try to make it what it was, to make it so vicious and so brutal looking, and to shock audiences the way Lewis did. You can see it. It's all over it. Every scene is crafted lovingly. The guts are just fantastic. Well, to my eyes, they're fantastic. But this film is so hated by so many critics that everyone has just absolutely just wrecked all over this one. As a matter of fact, as I was going what the critics thought of this one, that Variety did a review of this in a contemporary review, and they declare the film to be a totally inept shocker, incredibly crude and unprofessional from start to finish, and an insult to even the most puerile and salacious of audiences. It labels the entire production a fiasco, calling the screenplay senseless, the acting amateurish. Of Herschel Gordon Lewis's direction, camera work, and musical composition, because he also composed on this, the review judged that he had failed dismally on all three counts.
Nah.
And the LA Times described this film, this amazing fucking movie, as a blot on the American film industry. So, with that kind of little did they know, with that kind of fucking pedigree, you cannot deny the brilliance of its director and I would say the brilliance of its author, because the story was by David F. Friedman and Herschel Gordon Lewis, But the screenplay, which oftentimes screenplay can differ from the story because it puts things in a more cinematic perspective, was done by Alison Louise Down. And for a woman to have that kind of, to have that kind of stomach to make something like this in 1963, that woman was a gem. So there was something special about her. But yeah, this one, no one liked it. Well, no one except people like us. No critic liked it. Everyone fucking hated it. And I think it was Friedman said in response to that Variety article, his quote was, "Herschel and I have often wondered, who told the Variety scribe that we were taking ourselves seriously?" Because these guys were not. And you could tell there's love, but this movie does not take itself extremely seriously. It's for the sheer joy and the sheer fun and the sheer catharsis of seeing the carnage unfold. Stuff like, I mean, come on, that we can't deny that the whole like dinner spread, see the whole like the dining room table spread. I mean, that was pretty gnarly.
I mean, but
just fucking parts. God damn.
But it's when you get something that is ahead of its time, or that jumpstarts a genre, usually the first film is like panned across the board because critics are too busy comparing it to its other contemporaries of the time. But when you jumpstart a genre, there are no contemporaries. So they look at it like, well, it looks cheap. It's over gory for the sake of gore. It looks this. It's terrible. This should look like Casablanca, but it doesn't. It looks cheap. But you see the influence that it has today. And the fact that we're still talking about it 40 years, 50 years later says something about that. And the impact that it has, and the fact that it sticks with you, and the fact that it has influenced quite a few big-name directors today and big franchises. Like, you talk about the slasher films. This is one of the things that led to, I like to consider this kind of proto-slasher, but...
Yeah, I can see that.
Just like ahead of its time, but... You get the slasher film because, like 10, 11 years later, you get Texas Chainsaw Massacre come out, and it had huge praise. But somebody had to lead the way to that. So it's big. Yeah, open the door to it. Because, maybe it was Toby Hooper saw this and was like, maybe I can do something with this.
Wait a second, that makes me feel something in my jimmies.
Yep.
You could definitely see the inspiration in, like Toby Hooper and Sean S. Cunningham, individual, like all the way to Rob Zombie. You could see that the influence, just the wave of awesome directors that we love and we have talked about often, that this is where it went. And even big name directors. There are films like Peter Jackson obviously took Peter Jackson with stuff like Brain Dead, with Dead Alive. What was it? Ridley Scott obviously, I mean, we would not have the chestburster scene or the acceptability of the chestburster scene in 1979. It was 1979. 79?
79.
Yes. 1979. Were it not for things like this that we could show. You show people ripping apart like this. Well, yeah, that makes that groundwork has been set. We can now see an alien, exploding out of the chest of a human being, and throwing blood all over the cast. So these things we take them for granted, and we always have to look back at the foundation, and obviously the guy who started it all, Herschel Gordon Lewis. Which makes me so happy that this movie, 40 years later. I think it was actually 38 years, got a fucking sequel.
Yeah, this may be one of the longest wait periods for a sequel, and it's still directed by Herschel Gordon Lewis. Like, it wasn't like a film came out in the 60s and then a completely different group of people were like, oh, we kind of like this, and they acquire the rights and make a sequel. No, this is the same director 40 years later that finally got on top of it, and it's a Blood Feast 2, all you can eat. And
oh, really?
I dug this. I actually I really kind of dug the sequel because they injected comedy into it, which was kind of like, I think it was a nod to let people know that please don't take us so fucking seriously. Okay, we're not trying to make a statement. We're not trying to make a fucking statement here.
They just want to have fun. Like, that is it. Not every film has to be super serious.
It's almost a remake, though. That's the thing.
Well, yeah, it's I think the grandson of Ramses is trying to restart the catering business. I guess using tried and true methods.
Just some god fucking around with this dude.
But it's awesome because he wanted to approach that one more time. Like, that's actually really cool. It shows that it's a film that Lewis still thinks about, and he obviously must adore it because he wanted to make a sequel, and it's awesome.
So wild. Definitely check that one out.
Blood Feast 2.
It's shot in the same style as the original, in the same grindhouse style that Blood Feast was shot in. So it's it's really, really cool to see, like you mentioned, Herschel Gordon Lewis coming back 40 years later to revisit one of his most important IPs, and to go back and continue the story. That is it's a rarity in this industry to get the opportunity to do that. And I think a lot of people will a lot of fans of real super fans of horror, definitely of gore hounds, will definitely love these two fucking movies.
It's great. But yeah, that's what I've got a question for our audience, or I guess a task for the audience. Go watch both of these. The first one is great.
Preferably not in one sitting.
The second one's hilarious. Yeah, no, you got to do it like a double feature. Just run it all the way through.
Do a double feature.
Just run it all the way through. It's like, it'll be like 3 hours, but you got it. Blood Feast 2. Go watch it and let us know which one you liked better.
Yes, definitely check these two movies out. Preferably don't eat in between. I think would be the best.
Before, during, or
because before, during, or after. Go into it with an empty stomach. You probably won't want to eat that night. Eat afterwards anyway.
Yeah, but let us know for sure.
Let us know. weekinhorror@gmail.com. I was trying to plug the fucking email.
All right, JL, what do we got next?
All right. We're going even further. And this is a really, really cool one. One of my kind of like my guilty pleasures. The Crawling Eye, released July 7th, 1958. Otherwise known as the Trollenberg Terror, is a British black and white science fiction monster film. And because I love me some sci-fi, big giant monsters, crazy stuff like that. Directed by Quentin Lawrence and written by Jimmy Sangster, based on a story by Peter Key and the 1956 TV series. So this had a lot of inspiration that went into making this movie, starring Forrest Tucker, Lawrence Payne, and Jennifer Jane. The story is, in essence, about a United Nations troubleshooter, and no, this is not World War Z, because I goes, ew, I was watching that, I was like, oh my god, it's almost the same. But it's about it's about a United Nations troubleshooter, Alan Brooks, who is joined by a journalist, and to investigate unusual incidents occurring around the area of this fictional hotel in Switzerland. And it turns out that there is this strange cloud that emits radiation that is traveling over the area that many of the locals believe there are aliens inside. And all kinds of craziness is going around. And the troubleshooter, the UN guy, and the journalists are trying to figure out and put a stop to it. It's a fun little film, and while not great in every sense of it, it was the problem is that its failings helped to bury it amongst just the sea of sci-fi horror that was coming out during the 50s. And considering that this came out of England, and England was trying to follow suit, not a lot of people really saw it, unfortunately.
It really didn't go well because we talk about films release dates, and release dates are very, very important. I mean, if you are a filmmaker today and you have your first film coming out, you don't want your film to have the same release date as, say, like Christopher Nolan's film or Quentin Tarantino's film or anything like that, because it's just going to squash you right off the bat. People usually only see one movie a weekend, and guess which one is going to pick? It's not going to be yours. So it's not. And
Guess what?
So sorry.
it's not. It's like, I'm sorry. I got to pick one. And there are a lot of other factors that can also determine in terms of what movie release. There was a movie called Space Camp that came out in 1986, which about some group of teens that were actually launched into space through a space shuttle. Well, when they're in post production, the Challenger explosion happened. So now anything about a space shuttle accident at this point is now you can't do anything about it. So it tanked it. It's a good film, check it out, but it tanked the film completely. And this is what ended up happening with the Trollenberg Terror. You had movies like the Horror of Dracula. So you have these Hammer horror films that are coming out. Horror of Dracula, The Revenge of Frankenstein, Lake of the Dead. You have the Blob that came out.
Yeah, the nuclear monster genre was cropping up in America.
Exactly, and then the Terror from Beyond Space. So you had these movies, and there's several others that are just coming out. They're getting better releases. They're getting actors in it that people know, and honestly, this film just never stood a chance.
Such a shame, because it's actually a lot of fun, and it's cool to go back and look at how they did the monsters. I really, really enjoyed it. How they did the monsters, that when they discovered that the giant eyes, the one-eyed giant creatures like that, hitting them with fucking Molotovs and shit in that final climactic fight. It's a lot of fun to watch them do it. It's obviously, it was a little on the cheap side. Obviously, the effects don't really stand up today. But going back, you can see 1958. They actually weren't too terrible. The problem is that with limited budget, there's only so many talented individuals that you can pay to work on your project, and unfortunately, there's, like Eugene said, there's just too many other larger productions and studios putting out stuff that they can afford to bring in the top tier talent. But that did not stop this film from having subtle reverberations throughout pop culture.
All the way out through, when I was looking into the history of this movie, it was like John Carpenter would pop in and say that like his film The Fog was inspired from this film. But there was like little stuff like Small Soldiers. There was a moment when the toys were jumping on the remote and the TV turns on and this movie's playing in the background. And it's just, I mean, it pops up here and there all over the place. There was one, I cannot remember. There was a movie that I just watched. It was called like Baby Doll or Baby Girl Doll or something like that. That had referenced it there too. But this is another one of those ones that comes from so long ago that we still see referenced today.
What's actually pretty interesting is you'll get something that is kind of buried a little bit. And then in pop culture, it's like if they want to reference a horror movie, but they don't want to reference like a mainstream one, this is kind of one of the ones they go to, because in a couple of films you'll see it where they're watching it on the television, or somebody will just mention it in casual conversation. It could be like a throwaway line or something like that. And it's just that little bit of nugget where most people just won't even think about it, but handful of people, they're like, oh, the crawling eye, okay, all right, they did their homework.
It's popped up from time to time again. I love seeing it whenever it does. I really, really dug, and you didn't see it in the movie, but it was in the book. In the book Stephen King's It, the crawling eye actually shows up as one of the monsters that Pennywise morphs into to scare the kids. So it shows up there. So Stephen King made use of it. It was mocked on Mystery Science Theater 3000, which is a great fucking show. Crawling Eye was one of the. That was a funny one. Not as funny as Mono's Hands of Fate. That was a really good one. But,
that's one of my favorites.
I just wish those big hands would push him over. I'll always remember that line. But they totally lampooned the Crawling Eye, and it for some reason, despite its lack of popularity, it pops up every now and then, which is really, really cool to see people kind of. I mean, even it showed up in an episode of Freakazoid. So, and I honestly believe that it was the inspiration that this movie was the inspiration behind Welcome to Night Vale's the podcast Welcome to Night Vale, the Glow Cloud. Which is yes,
okay, yeah,
the glow cloud the glow cloud that occasionally rains dead animals all over the place, and I firmly believe that the Crawling Eye was a big inspiration behind that. So we've seen it, despite the fact that it wasn't popular at the time. It did make a ton of money. It's not one of the more well knowns, like the Trollenberg Terror or the Crawling Eye. There are people out there who have loved it and have kept it alive, which is really, really, really cool. So that brings up my what I wanted to ask the audience, and this is kind of an obscure one, so many of you may not really have an opinion. That's okay, but I'm kind of curious. We talk so much about, did you like a film, or did you like, what did you dig about this? But the Crawling Eye has its roots. The story has its roots in radio horror, in radio scare shows, where it'd be like, kind of very similar to War of the Worlds, in that kind of style. And I'm very, very curious. Do you listen to those? Do any of our listeners listen to old-timey radio show broadcasts? Because you can listen to them on YouTube. They're online. Do any of you listen to those? And if you do, what is your favorite of them? I'm very, very curious. Let us know. weekinhorror@gmail.com. All right, we are kicking off. We're going to go a little bit dark. And we're going to kick it off to Eugene, who's got our next one.
All right. So released July 7th, 1995, we have the movie Species, which is directed by Roger Donaldson and starring Ben Kingsley, Michael Madsen, Alfred Molina, Forrest Whitaker, and Natasha Henstridge. And basically what ends up happening is the government intercepts a space transmission containing some genetic sequencing, and so they end up following that, and they mold it with like a female genome to basically make something in a lab, and they end up creating Syl, played by Natasha Henstridge. And so she grows up, accelerating. She has like some mutation abilities and other kinds of stuff, and they end up like, well, we don't want to deal with this, so they try to take her out, and then she goes off, and her goal is to become impregnated so she can continue her species. So it was
wants to have a baby.
Yeah, really, really wants to have a baby.
Really?
Yeah.
I did really dig, and I know a lot of big fans out there know it. I really dug the hallmarks, basically, because H.R. Giger, who was responsible for the designing he was an artist who designed his designs. His really, really creepy designs were the inspiration behind the Aliens in the Alien franchise, and it was also his artwork that inspired the design of Syl in her in her alien form. And if you have not seen those images, they are trippy as fuck. But definitely give them a look, because they are really cool, and you can see in Giger's work, you can almost see the transition of what Giger created to what appeared in the film, and what they kept and what they decided to remove, or what they decided to kind of streamline. But really, really cool shit right there. But this is an intro. I love this movie now more now than before. I always enjoyed Species, but it's because we've come so far in technology in this day and age. We are getting to the point where we are pushing, where we are set. We are on the landing pad to progress further into space, and we're picking up radio signals from from the cosmos. We don't know where they come from. Really, really interesting shit is going on in science fields today. But this one, 1995. I mean, fuck, I was 15.
Yeah, I was.
This movie Go
Yeah, no,
ahead.
I was 10, 11, something like that.
Yeah. And this one asked the questions, or asked an early question. Stephen Hawking rest in peace, Stephen Hawking, but only a few years ago, Stephen Hawking broached the subject of aliens or humans encountering another intelligent species, humans encountering aliens of any kind, and he was fearful of it. But this in 1995, sci-fi, it asked that question: what would happen? Humans meeting aliens. And I love that aspect about this film.
First thing that happens is like, we just fucking, oh yeah, this genome sequence just comes down from space. Let's fucking make it.
Let's hybridize it with a human being.
Like they handed them like a Lego kit, and there's a big picture of like a nasty alien on the front of it. And they're like, we should build it. And then, and then it goes into the whole, the species is trying to like, is it invasive? Is it, what is it, like a superhuman? And there was just a lot that went into the whole view. Like you said, I enjoy it more now because like you said, it was 1995, but also we've come so far. So just watching like, there's the early Alien movies, Alien, what people thought aliens would be like and like how people would react to them. Now, I don't know. Stephen Hawking made a good point. He said like you said, he was fearful of like, cause what would we do? I mean, at this point I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. But the thought of
given 2020.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you gotta think.
Given the state
of
of 2020, it wouldn't shock.
It would be rough. But I mean,
Fuck, Yellowstone could blow up, and it wouldn't be a shocker.
Oh, at this point, well, because you have to keep in mind any alien species that can get here
they're
are
smarter than us.
yeah, the nearest star is 4 light years away. So, I mean, that means even just theoretically, the fastest that we could possibly ever, it'll still take 4 years to get to. That's just the nearest solar system, how vast the galaxy is. So, if you had an intelligent species that came, even if they came from that star, will have technology far more advanced than anything we can like perceive at this point.
Is that even really that? Is it really that implausible? I mean,
Oh, I'm not saying
that we've made like.
Oh, I'm not saying it's
far
implausible.
more advanced. I mean, we're pretty close to being able to go the speed of light.
It's being able to hit the speed of light, or maybe even possibly travel faster than the speed of light, means if they want to take over our planet, there is nothing we can do about it.
Oh no, that technology would annihilate us.
It would,
or some sort of alien pathogen.
It would annihilate us so fast.
The whole thing behind the whole like the people get this genome sequence and they're just like, okay. I'm like, that's our downfall right there. We would just fuck it up.
And of course the argument is made, especially in this film, because obviously, organic life, one of the fundamental aspects of organic life, as we know in the universe, is the desire to procreate. And of course, any alien species, we would have no idea what it's, biologically, anything about it. And so the idea of it being an alien and trying to breed and propagate its own species, it works as far as the creep fest goes. But that was one thing that always did kind of bug me about species. And this is where we're going to kind of take a little bit of a deep dive, in this film and our next film, is that, species, I didn't really grasp what was unsettling me until I was much, much older. But the use of motherhood and the act of procreation, no matter how, even if it's alien or it's human or whatever, the act of procreation, from the female perspective, being utilized as a horror trope. And I find that to be really, really, I don't know, I have mixed feelings. I really do, because I started looking, and as we're doing this podcast, and of course I'm a giant horror fan, I began to see this trope is used actually quite often. The female body, the act of how everything is internalized. The baby is internalized. The sex, they internalize. They kind of I'm not going to get into graphic detail, but they kind of internalize the man. Their emotions are internalized. Everything about it being contrasted to the male, and maybe I don't know. I don't know what the reasons for it. My hypothesis is that it's because the vast majority of horror fans are male. So it's playing to that respect. But I could be wrong. What do you think?
I guess now that you mentioned the motherhood kind of being widespread, it plays a lot, and not just like necessarily like the being pregnant or the horror too, but like even into like the Omen, like the child. They always play off of the mother, and the mother always comes off as crazy or evil or has something to do with it, or but it always puts you in like a, well, if it was your kid, what would you do kind of situation, or yours, if you were in her shoes, what would you do? And so yeah, not
Or like Rosemary's
Rosemary's
Baby.
Baby, exactly. And
Yeah.
I mean, like it goes, yeah, I mean, exactly. That's a perfect example of, you're gonna love your children no matter what, and there's nothing like a mother's love.
Yeah, and I think that.
I'm sure that's a tagline for a movie.
But I think that's something that is pretty interesting because you talk about the relationship between, say, a mother and an offspring, which is one of the strongest bonds that there is out there. When just a child's in danger, the lengths that a mother will go to protect, and we see it across species, not just with humans, but just a ton of different animals that it's like that. And
Oh yeah, what's the lyric to that song? The female of the species is more deadlier than the male.
yeah,
Always.
absolutely.
I mean, we all
It's
have significant others. We understand.
yeah.
Yeah.
Even when you talk about even like with bears and the mother bear, what's the fastest way to piss off a bear is you take one of the cubs.
No, what's the
And
fastest way to die? Take a bear cub.
that's it.
Yes,
That's what you're looking for
absolutely.
there.
So that's a curiosity that I have, that I kind of fall back on, where I can see it, and it's evocative and sometimes provocative, and to the male eye, and I'm wondering, like, why the use of it? Is it necessary? Is it something that will always be a horror trope, or are its roots kind of in sexism, kind of in how some a lot of men kind of view the female body as kind of alien to their own, because they only know their own skin. They can only kind of bodily compare with other males, and the female body being so functionally or fundamentally different from their own, there is a kind of alien sensation to it. And because the vast majority of horror moviegoers are male, it's just a big, males make up the primary or the most of the demographic. Was this kind of born out of that? Is like, we know the audience we're catering to, so we can play on these tropes. And to take Alien, for example, that was the same thing. Impregnation, turning the man into the woman by impregnating him with the alien. And so the kind of role reversal on that, the raping the guy's mouth and then sticking an egg in him, and then it bursting out of him giving birth, and it made there was an unsettling sensation to that amongst male viewers, where they were deeply unsettled by that, but women were not really. It was the death, the blood coming out, and spraying the rest of the crew, the alien coming out of the whole thing and then running off. That was freaky. But guys, it really resonated with male audiences, the idea of this thing jumping on you and then basically fucking your face. Okay? And impregnating you with something exactly that's beyond your control. And it puts the man in the woman's shoes, and many people were very discomfited by that. And I'm kind of curious, this trope, is it necessary? Is it a natural progression of the art form? Or is this something we consciously do that maybe we don't need to do it anymore? That's where my mind has been kind of like warping around that. And we're going to get, particularly in this one, whereas Natasha Henstridge's Syl is obviously the ultimate beauty in her human form. And in her human form, she's just trying to lure, that's the bait, trying to lure men in. And then, of course, to perform her function as to procreate, she, morphs into her alien form. And so now it's terrifying. Now it's not just trying to flirt with you. It's not just trying to, seduce you or to do whatever. Now it's trying to, get it on with you. And then all of a sudden the spikes and tentacles come out.
What's really interesting is typically you have the males are the aggressors, and the males are the ones that bad people. Males are typically the ones that force themselves on the females. And that's typically how it is. Obviously, not every case, but typically how that is when you look at, say, like sexual assaults. But in this movie, Species, it's the opposite because she's the aggressor. And
she's actively looking for
a mate. She's actively, aggressively looking for somebody. And then once the moment comes, she shows her true self. So it's like it's a sexual assault, but the gender roles are reversed in it. And maybe
so she shows herself, and but when she's there to accomplish her task, when she's that close, she reveals herself to be a monster.
And exactly. And when you look at assault cases, that's simply how it is. You can have a guy that can be super nice and he can buy you dinner and all this other kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden you get alone in the car with him in the back seat, and then the guy forces himself on a female. That's the true guy at that moment. So it's when she is forcing herself upon the guy, she is revealing her true self.
So could we legitimately say, and I definitely want to hear what you think on this. Hear what you think on this, Alex. But could we legitimately say that it's not so much motherhood or procreation of that or any of that as a horror trope? It is the reversal of that, putting the female form in the guy's shoes and guys reacting negatively because they're seeing it from the female perspective. That this is kind of like, this is what it looks like to us, and you are now seeing it. Because you can identify with these actions. You can identify with the aggression. You can identify with the pursuit. You can identify often with the violence. Only you're seeing what you guys do, only in the female form. And that makes terrifying because they're not so much scared of the woman. They're scared of what the woman is doing because they can identify with what and why and how, what and why she is doing.
Yeah, I think that... Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
I just watched this thing because you guys got into it real hard there. I just watched this thing just spin in circles and flip and twist, and it all makes a lot of sense. I feel like a lot of these movies that are well done with a lead actress, being the mother, can play it very well because of those natural instincts. Like you're talking about kind of a reversal thing. Like here, I'm going to portray what we see. This is what we feel. And so like I see a lot of that in those mother, the actual actresses on that end. With the movie wise, I think you're right when they take male they want to make males uncomfortable because like there's fans are males and they're trying to hit an audience, but also it's just like that's just how it's always been. So when you see stuff outside that uses this trope, and then you kind of move outside of it and look at it a different way. I'm trying to think of something recent, but it's kind of all been the same because that's what it's always been. So I think maybe they should probably look in at, we're talking about it. I'm trying to think of some other examples. I can't off the top of my head, but I feel like maybe we could use this trope still and maybe work it more into a modern day, now that all this like change is going on, let's try to portray this trope in a different way. I'm kind of excited because you guys brought up a lot of really good points about how it's how make the men get uncomfortable with some of the stuff and the women are like not uncomfortable with it. It's like maybe you can use that in the future to kind of bridge that gap.
That's an interesting point because if it's making you feel uncomfortable, it's making you feel uncomfortable for a reason.
Right.
And it may be something that in our society no one likes to talk about, and we squash it and you put it in the back closet and then you just ignore it. But then you have a movie that brings that out and it's like, no, this is something that happens. Look at it.
Right.
Look at it from this perspective. And that's what's uncomfortable about it. But it's something that needs to be brought out.
Yeah. Squash it out.
That is. So, as I like to ask the audience, and we talked about how Species kind of has that gender role swap on it. What are some of the other movies out there that have a gender role swap? That maybe it's something that males normally do, some males do that females do now, or maybe something that females do that males normally do. So, what are some of your favorite horror films that have that gender role swap? Definitely email us and let us know. I'm actually really excited to see some of these answers.
Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh,
started out for you.
Awesome.
So, all right, Alex, what's our last movie today?
Speaking of, so we're gonna finish this off on a movie called Contracted. This came out July 7th, 2013. And I was looking at that date and I was like, oh, that wasn't that long ago. And boy, was I wrong. This is a body horror movie written and directed by Eric Englund. This movie stars Nahara Townsend. Oh, I got it there. Nice. Caroline Williams, Alice MacDonald, Katie Stegman, Matt Mercer, Charlie Kuntz, and Simon Barrett. And this movie follows a woman, Samantha, through her transformation after having a... Okay, so she goes to a party, has a little bit too much, gets drugged, and is raped by this man. And the next day she starts to feel ill, and she progressively becomes more sick and deteriorated as she slowly kind of transforms into a zombie because of this STD, I guess you could call it. This biohazard STD.
Yeah, what's interesting about it, and I think this is almost the same year as It Follows that came out. Yeah. Whereas It Follows has the external threat because you have that creature that's chasing them, despite the target being sexually transmitted. This is more of the internal, where it's the internal itself, where she starts falling apart, her fingernails are coming off, and her eyes are becoming bloodshot. Yeah, her tooth comes out, and
her hair starts coming out in clumps. Yeah,
and
that scene when she's like, "Your hair." Oh yeah. Whoa.
Just her just that moment when she's in the mirror when her friend is like, "Oh my god, what the hell is wrong with your eye?" And she's like, "What?" Because she didn't feel anything, and she goes, she's like, literally just like, "What the fuck?" I felt so bad for her. Just the idea, and this is interesting that you brought that up, Eugene, because we were talking about that before with Tetsuo the Iron Man, and it falls very much in the vein of like Cronenberg and the body kind of revolting against what you want it to do. You're expecting one thing, but your body is just completely out of control. And I love that there were hallmarks of that here, but it definitely was a twist on. I love the twist on the cautionary tale of that, and it flipped it in a way, and which I dug, because the typical cautionary tale is girls who go out and girls who party and put themselves in bad situations. It's obviously it's a victim blaming trope, but girls who go out and do this, bad things can happen to them. They can get date raped at parties. They can get robbed. They can get mugged. They can get killed. All kinds of stuff. But the flip on this is that this girl who is just trying to relax and kind of get away from a bad situation, kind of clear her head a bit, is taken advantage of. She's raped by a party goer who drugs her, legit, and then. But ultimately, even though what happens to her is horrific, it ultimately empowers her. And I like that aspect because we start the movie and Samantha is just out of control. She's broken up with her girlfriend Nikki. She doesn't know what she wants to do in her life. Her flower thing is speculative at best. She has no support from her mother, who doesn't support her lesbianism or her previous life, because she used to be kind of a party kid, and she's gotten herself off drugs, but her mother doesn't support her, her girlfriend doesn't support her, and nobody really takes her seriously, and she's just kind of drifting through life. And so, in a bad headspace, she gets taken advantage of, just like the caution tale, but it flips it in that she's from that horrible experience, she ends up deriving her power and ultimately ends up weaponizing her affliction against kind of those who those who really have disregarded her and completely treated her like she's
by
invisible.
tearing their throats out with her teeth.
Yes, by eating them alive and doing shit like that. Yes, but I like the flipping of the cautionary table that we can be empowered by our traumas. And though ultimately Samantha is, descending into the state of the undead, she is becoming a fucking zombie from the inside out. There's some graphic scenes that depict that. But I did enjoy the flipping of that. She recognizes her affliction. She recognizes that it can work for her in a limited basis. She doesn't have much time, so she applies it. And ultimately goes to show that she had that strength in her. She just needed something to kick her in the pants. And unfortunately, it was something horrifying like, catching an STD virus that turns you into a fucking zombie.
What's actually...
What a Wednesday.
Yeah, well, damn.
Grr, Wednesday.
But what's interesting, because you brought up the point in terms of taking something and switching it to your power, is the fact that I had a friend that had a drug problem for a while, and everybody went and was like talk behind her back and she had to go to rehab. Oh, she had to do this. She had to do that. And everybody talked down on the fact that she had to go to rehab. And
a bunch of assholes.
Yeah, which is like a dick move. And then when I got a chance to go and hang out with her, she was proud of the fact that she went to rehab, because to her it was recognizing the problem, dealing with something to make her life better. And like sitting down and talking to her about that really changed my viewpoint. Like, rehab is something to be proud of. And she's been clean for 7-8 years now. But awesome. Yeah, I mean, so it's definitely a happy ending. But you take that, and it's right off the bat. It's she's the partier. She does this. She brought it upon herself, and no, somebody can actually change and sometimes embrace that. And then of course she goes and kills people. So
she tears people's fucking throats out with her teeth. That was so brutal.
Well, there's a couple scenes, especially the that third act sex scene.
With her
when she seduces that guy who's always had the hot spot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, gross.
Yeah, that's
gross.
I think it was Riley when she seduces Riley.
I blocked that scene out. Shut up. Dude, that was rough. And then he goes into the room and sees the other. Things really hit the fucking fan there.
I'm just gonna say maggots. That's it right there.
Stop it.
Yeah, gnarly.
You're not supposed
but that
to be there.
goes to show, and that will lead us back around onto the subject that we broached in Species, is the horror of the female form, and that the functionality of it, the kind of alien nature of it. And yet the absolutely undeniable alluring beauty of it as well, drawing men in, ultimately leading them to we could trace shit like this all the way back to the sirens of Greek mythology. Beautiful women drawing men into their doom, and it once again is this is a trope that we run into quite a lot. The horror of the female form.
Yeah, this is something that it's not talked about a lot growing up. Especially, we're coming from like the male perspective. Most people growing up aren't taught that much about the female form, the female body, and there are plenty of women that get little to no education at all on their own bodies. So
that's not okay.
Which is not okay. I am 100% towards sexual education and telling people and being informative and all this other kind of stuff, and that is so much better. But we still kind of have this Victorian mentality that no, you keep it repressed, you don't say anything, abstinence, you simply just wait until marriage. Because Texas was big about it for a long time. We'll just wait till marriage. And that was like the sexual education. So the female form becomes mysterious. It's alluring and can draw you in, but it's scary and it's unknown at the same time.
Just like the genetic sequencing thing, we always gotta fuck around with it. We gotta touch it.
Oh, like in Splice when we were talking about that.
Oh yeah.
See, there's another one that we touched on. Because in Splice did that because Dren was female at first. And then, of course, in the third act of that, she transitions to male and she attempts to procreate as well. But the female form in that, both alluring and extraordinarily deadly at the same time. This is a consistent trope, and it brings up questions.
It really does. It brings up, and this is another one of those where it can make you uncomfortable. So that means it's hitting the core on something. It's hitting on some of the values that we have grown up with. Or I guess maybe values is the wrong word, but it's kind of a tale of society that we've grown up with. And hopefully a lot of this stuff comes out more, that we get more information about it, so it's not such a big deal anymore.
We need to know.
We need to know.
And not just women either. Males need to be educated on this stuff too. It needs to be an all-around thing. And you know what? It really falls on parents, because we've been talking about these movies this whole time, or the last couple at least. This procreation and this mysterious female form. I'm 30, and like I remember going back thinking about it in school. We just weren't taught, and our parents had like it's uncomfortable, but like it needs to be known. You got things like STDs, not necessarily ones that'll turn you into a fucking cannibalistic zombie person, but there's enough that we need to know before it's too late, and it can't just be on women to know that stuff. Men need to know it too.
I mean, they really do. And any proof of that is, for our listeners out there, think back to when you're in high school and all the misconceptions you had on sex. Because we all heard all these tales. Oh, well, she can't get pregnant if their first time, or if you're standing up in the shower, and all this other kind of stuff. All these misconceptions and rumors that spread. And as adults now, we know it's all bullshit. But if you're not around to tell your kids, hey, that's bullshit, by the way, that's what they're going to believe, because that's all they got. That's all the information they have access to.
Yeah.
And that's 2013 that this movie came out, and it's still something that we've definitely progressed a lot recently, and that that has a huge impact on the way that we have. Even movies now, you can watch movies and there's all sorts of gender swapping and role reversals and all this stuff. But then even as soon ago as not that, I don't know, back in 2013, not that long ago, stuff like this was still acceptable. Like you were talking about, this girl was drugged, date rape was like a thing. You got this trope of like, oh, this party girl goes out and she's more likely to get raped. And we've been talking about that a lot as a human race recently, about like, it should not be about what the girl's wearing. It should not be about, it's a woman should be able to walk to her house, from her car at night, not worried about getting raped, and then having somebody be like, oh, well, what was she wearing? No, fuck that. Treat every single person with respect.
You do. It's the only crime out there where people blame the victim, because you don't hear stuff like, oh, well, you know what? That guy was asking for his house to get broken into. Yeah, that guy was asking to get his car stolen. Like no one does that. But it's, well, what was she wearing? Was she, putting signals out there that the man took wrong or anything like that? I don't care if a girl is butt ass naked walking down the street. She does not deserve to get raped, like at all.
True.
As much as not. You deserve to get raped, like think of it that way.
But it's an interesting perspective, and that's why I enjoyed the movie. I had mixed feelings about its subject matter, because I think you can look at it from two perspectives. You can look at it from the the tragedy happens to the girl, and out of that tragedy, she's able to find some modicum of strength. She's able to find her power and utilize that power to her advantage before the inevitable conclusion. And then on the other side of that, you could say that a woman acting on the more I would say the darker side of that, the darker opinion would be that this silly girl who doesn't know what she wants winds up getting it, and just kind of acting out, gets herself into a bad situation with a really bad guy, ends up getting sick, and then doing the only thing she can do, which is lash out at everyone around her because of her deteriorating condition.
I'm so mad.
I don't know if both perspectives. I know many people think that both are valid, but it feels that there is a sense of sexism to both of them, because there was another film that was very comparable to this one, which was Thanatomorphosed.
Exactly.
Didn't ring the same, because that was a girl who it was kind of going through the same thing that Samantha's going through in this one, but she's in an abusive relationship, and her condition. And she's been behaviorally conditioned by this as, battered woman syndrome. But as her body begins to deteriorate, she recognizes the kind of the dichotomy and begins to retaliate back. And there was a greater sense of empowerment in that one than there was in this one. This one felt a bit more mixed.
I could agree with that totally. I guess that brings me up to a question for the audience. I want to know what you guys think about this trope, and using this. We've talked about both ways. It's kind of sexist. This sexist kind of trope as horror. Is this something that would be acceptable because it's scary and it makes you feel vulnerable? It puts a potential issue for a lot of people out there on the screen. So yes, it could be scary and it could be horror, but is it necessary? Is it too sexist? Is this movie? And movies like it, is it too sexist to have out there? Should we go in a different direction, maybe kind of try to use the vulnerability in a different way, not just it's because she's a cute woman, or can we still use this as a horror trope and it be effective in doing what it's supposed to do, which is scare you and not take it any farther than that? Are we looking too far into it? Let us know. All right, JL, why don't you start us off with our happy birthday, and that's going to be followed up with an in memoriam.
Absolutely, definitely. We do have one birthday and one in memoriam. The birthday we're taking, and I that's one thing I love. One thing I really, really love about doing this show is that we get to occasionally send out some love to the character actors that everybody sees and everybody recognizes, but nobody really knows who they are. And happy birthday today to Pruitt Taylor Vince, who was born July 5th, 1960. And I wanted to show this guy some love because he is one of my all-time favorite character actors, easily top 3. Everybody's seen him. If I were to describe him, you might recognize him. He is a tall guy. He's a bit on the heavy side, but he is known for an actual physical, it's not really an ailment, but it's just something about him. He has a condition called, I believe it was pronounced nystagmus.
Yeah, nystagmus.
Which causes involuntary movement of the eye. So his eyes shift back and forth. They're looking constantly shifting rapidly. Now, he's in his later roles, as he's gotten kind of a better control of it, but it still occurs, especially when you can tell when he gets emotional, his eyes kind of just dart back and forth, they're not focusing on something. And he has incorporated it well into many roles that he has played. I think when I first saw his work was in the X-Files, when he was the guy who was ice pick lobotomizing women, and he tried to do it to Scully. Because Chris Carter's able to go in there with the camera and get that kind of really close up when he's got the troika, going towards their face and his eyes are just twitching back and forth like that. So wild. But that's definitely what got me, where he first caught my attention. And I've followed him ever since and pretty much everything that's got. He's been in so much stuff. So much good stuff, too.
Oh, yeah, because he was in Identity with John Cusack. In it,
yes.
Which that was a fantastic movie, and he was also in Constantine with Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, I remember
He was the priest.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I mean, it's good the fact
Father
that
Hennessy,
Father Hennessy.
Father Hennessy.
So I mean, it's good the fact that he is getting a lot of work. I mean, he's been on TV shows like The Blacklist and Agents of Shield, Stranger Things, Heroes Reborn, The Mentalist, True Blood. I mean, he's just working constantly, and it's nice that you have these people out there that like legitimately go out and make a career, and they're just doing their thing. We're all so fixated on the Brad Pitts and all the other kind of stuff, but it's like, hey, I'm just going out, I'm making a career, and I'm just doing what he loves. That's awesome.
These are the guys that give that make them, that basically that populate the films that we watch, that make them real, that allow us to break, that allow us to suspend our disbelief. And I mean, this guy, I mean, Pruitt started off strong, and it started off strong with Angel Heart, with fucking Robert De Niro and Mickey Rourke. I mean, he kicked that one off in 1987, and he's been going strong ever since. With he was in Red Heat, in Mississippi Burning, Jacob's Ladder, JFK, Natural Born Killers. I mean,
Deputy Kavanaugh, Natural Born Killers.
That's right. The one that Mallory shoots through the hand when he's like, and Tommy Lee Jones like, oh, he's dead. But he's done so much work with so many individuals, and I wanted to show Pruitt the love that he deserves, because as much as he's done in film, and I think the latest thing, people remember him if they saw him from Bird Box.
Yep,
he was the blind priest in the school that Sandra Bullock was trying to get to with the kids.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And as much as he's done in film, he has done just as much in TV. So it's really, really awesome to see him, to see how much work he's churning out. I loved him in Stranger Things. So super, super cool. Happy birthday to Pruitt Taylor Vince. Going strong. We hope to see more from you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Pruitt. And
Eugene, yes, you have our in memoriam.
Yes. And so for our in memoriam, born July 10th, 1926, and passed away July 2nd, 1993, we have Fred Gwynne. And
I love this dude so much.
A extremely talented actor. We're looking at films such as Pet Sematary, the original, the good one from 1981. And I want to clarify that the only correct Pet Sematary. That one. And then he was on The Munsters. He was also in the movie My Cousin Vinny. And just...
Yes, that's right. He was Judge. He was
Judge.
Yeah.
Yes. What is a ute? The two utes. What is a ute? Oh, what was it Joe Pesci said? What was his fucking line? And Fred Gwynne just went off. He was like, how about I just go fuck myself? And the judge is like, what did you say? He's like, what? What? I didn't hear nothing. He was so excellent in that.
I mean, just amazing. Just amazing. I mean, somebody who obviously has done some like fantastic roles, has been in some great I and it's just great to honor him.
It was so cool. I mean, we all grew up. I think many of us grew up. I kind of grew up watching the Munsters.
It was Herman Munster.
It was I think that with along with things like with shows like Elvira, and was kind of like the opening of kind of me as a child into the area of Universal horror, because you kind of wonder, you kind of recognize, it's Frankenstein. That's Bride of Frankenstein. Eddie is a fucking vampire. Grandpa is a vampire. Eddie is a werewolf, and then the hot daughter, who is human, which is interesting. But and it was kind of like the opening the door to Universal Monsters, and Fred Gwynn's performance as Herman, the affable and goofy Frankenstein, kind of made that okay. It said, yes, these can be scary figures, but they don't have to be scary figures. And it kind of cements it in your mind as a child and opened the door for me to kind of go into horror. And I have Fred Gwynne to thank for that. And just, I couldn't possibly do it, but he was so much fun to watch on that show, and the everybody from Grandpa all the way around, the whole cast was amazing. But definitely so influential on my life as an artist, as a horror fanatic, as a writer as well. So loved him, and of course, he did many movies, but we're all gonna love him and remember him for playing Judd Crandall in Pet Sematary.
Yeah,
which was just stellar.
Which is just, I mean, it's just
Absolutely.
amazing. I know. We've talked about Pet Sematary so many times, and how Judd has a special place in our heart.
Always.
Yes.
Always. So
cool.
Definitely, we miss you, Fred. Thank you for everything that you've given us.
Rest in peace, Fred.
Rest in peace. Well, all right. I'd like to thank our listeners for stopping by and hanging out with us for a little bit. Why don't you guys go ahead to weekinhorror.net. Give us a check there. We do a monthly t-shirt giveaway on there. And we just had our first winner. So go ahead, go on there, punch in your email address. We won't spam you with anything. We're not going to send you a whole bunch of stuff. It's just the easiest way for us to get you all into one place. Go to weekinhorror@gmail.com. Let us know what you think, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. Any questions, any comments, anything, any ideas that you got for maybe some upcoming content. Let us know all about that, weekinhorror@gmail.com. If you really like what we're doing here, go to our Patreon, patreon.com/weekinhorror. We have tiers that start at $1 and go up from there with content, different content at each level. If you want to go ahead and help us out, we're struggling here in quarantine with you, but even $1 helps us bring this stuff to you. If not, hey, it's cool. If you want to go on there, you can catch our Bloodbath on there and our After Dark, or Bloodbath when we put two horror icons against each other, and our After Dark where we sit down and talk to our special guests a little bit more intimately and in depth about the industry. Check out our Facebook and our Twitter. For Daily Splatter, it's going to be facebook.com/weekinhorror, Twitter @weekinhorror. Daily Splatter is a little bit of horror history every day, straight to your feed. You can interact with us on those posts as well. We love to hear from you. We also have our YouTube channel up and running. YouTube, obviously, Week in Horror, where you can catch our episodes there and also interact with us in the comment section. We'll be all over all that. We're not doing anything here. I know a couple of us have been quarantined here and there, so we're around, and it sounds like we're going to be around a little bit more often now since Texas is now going back into quarantine. So way to go. Hit us up. I'm Alex.
I'm JL.
I'm Eugene.
We will see you next week, and as always, stay scared.